for joining us. I'd like to thank our landlord, the president of St. Anselm's, President Favazza, for opening up the Institute of Politics here room, even though this is a New England Council event. We're appreciative of all of the support that the college here has given to us over the years, and Neil Levesque has done an outstanding job. So to the president and his team here, thank you for all that you do for the New England Council in particular. There's a young lady here I'd like to recognize, Amy Latimer. You may know her, Governor. Just became the chair of the Republican State Committee in Massachusetts. An awesome responsibility to represent 280 registered Republicans? I forget. I don't know, whatever it is. Whatever it is. But we want to welcome her. Moving right along, I want to thank BAE Systems for generously sponsoring today's breakfast, and in particular, Tom Bishop. Many of you know that BAE is a giant employer here in this wonderful state, and more importantly, a major player in the national defense industry. So proud to count them as a New England Council member, and truly grateful for their ongoing support of our work. It's hard to believe already April is here. It's been a very busy period for the New England Council. Next week we'll be hosting a breakfast with another governor, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Maher in Boston. We also have a variety of other Capitol Hill gatherings planned in the weeks ahead with guests including Congressman Bill Keatings, Congressman Stephen Lynch, and Congressman David Cicilline of Rhode Island. We'll be back here again at St. A's in late May for a Capitol Hill gathering, breakfast with Congresswoman Annie Custer. And of course, we're now just over a month out from our 2023 Washington Leaders Conference. We hope that many of you will join us. Over 200 people have already signed up from all New England states to gather for 2 days in the nation's capital to hear from members of the Congress, members of the United States Senate, members of the administration. So I hope that many of you will take advantage of our invitation. But today we're delighted to welcome the Chief Executive Officer of the Granite State and a great friend of the New England Council, and probably most people in this room, and that's the Governor Christie. Many of you know he's serving his 4th term, which makes him the 82nd governor of this great state. He's been named the nation's most fiscally responsible governor by the Cato Institute. I know that he's very proud to have delivered not 1, not 2, but 3 balanced state budgets with no new taxes. Over the course of his tenure, he's worked to provide tax relief to employers and small businesses, and has made historic investments in public education to help ensure that students are prepared to succeed in the modern workforce. The governor has also been a champion for combating addicting and substance abuse. Early in his tenure, he launched several initiatives that become national models for prevention, treatment, and recovery from substance use disorder. As a result, New Hampshire has bucked national trends and seen decreases in overdose deaths. So it should come as no surprise that he has been consistently ranked one of the most popular governors in our country. We're delighted he could take time to join us today and provide an update on his ongoing work to continue to drive economic growth here in this wonderful state. Please join me. Please join me. Please, I'm just trying to read your writing, Gavin. Please join. Yeah, I'm just trying to read your writing. I'm just trying to read your writing. He is one of the most popular governors of the United States. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the governor of this great state, Christie. All right, thank you.
One of the most popular governors in the country now that Charlie Baker's gone. The best thing the only good thing that of Charlie leaving Massachusetts and Larry Hogan leaving Maryland is finally I get my shot at least near the top. Full room, right? Full room. I said, as a lot of you know, if you've heard me speak before, I don't really read speeches. I actually wrote something down, and then we all know it doesn't matter. What I'm going to do is kind of, how much time do I have? I want to be cognizant. No, come on. Okay, I'll do like 10, 15 minutes, and then maybe a couple questions, if we can do questions. Yeah, I love the questions, and here's really your shot to ask me, or take a shot, whatever you want to do, right? Everyone can have their moment. So what I thought I would do is, I don't want to do the state of the state. Like, I don't want to say no one cares about New Hampshire, but that's not what I think. A lot of you are from Massachusetts, they're from New England, even from around the country that have joined us this morning, talking about where we are. And I mean, it's a slow news day. I'll have to dig deep to find stuff to talk about. But obviously, look, not just with what happened yesterday and this week and really what's happened in the last couple of years. I mean, we are in a flux in this country. There's no doubt about it. I'm not one of those people that thinks the country's going to hell and all that. No, I am very eternally optimistic. I'm in the mix. I'm in the game, so to say. I'm seeing how these systems work. I'm blessed that I'm from a state like New Hampshire, where we have challenges like anywhere else, but we have the right teams in place to take on those challenges. We have the right teams in place, whether they're political challenges or operational challenges, understanding how systems work, the courage to rebuild those systems, working across party lines, and at the end of the day, leadership that gets something done. Too often in the last few years, I think one of the frustrations of America on both sides is we back leadership that either can't win in November, because that's frustrating enough, and if you want to talk pure elections at this point, let's remind ourselves, as a conservative, I'm a big believer, you nominate and go after and get behind whether it's for the city planner or governor or senate or president. Not just the candidate that you're behind, but the candidate that can win in November and get stuff done in the following year. Those are the two biggest criteria. Because if you can't govern if you don't win. Now, on the operational side, I think New Hampshire is a standout. I mean, there is a reason I'm traveling the country. There is a reason over the past 6 months, people, they say, well, how are you doing it? How is it that you have no sales tax and no income tax? You got rid of your interest and dividends tax. You have no millionaire's tax. Yeah, that's a joke on all of you from Massachusetts, by the way. What the hell are you all thinking? Crazy. Thank you. I'm giving Maher Healy the Customer Service Award for New Hampshire because of the insanity that's going on in Massachusetts. But look, I mean, just to jump into that a little bit, I say it all the time. As people would complain to me, Charlie Baker isn't as conservative enough and blah, blah. I said, look, Charlie Baker was a great governor for Massachusetts. And he had to deal with the politics he was given. And he held the tidal wave of socialism back for 8 years. And unfortunately, that is now crashing over the great state of Massachusetts, or the Commonwealth, sorry. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And that's not a good thing, right? I joke about it, and I get Massachusetts as kind of the butt of our jokes a lot. But at the end of the day, New England as a whole needs that economic engine of Massachusetts and Boston to be successful. We want it to be successful. Now, it is true, as soon as that millionaire's tax passed, our phone was literally ringing off the hook. A lot of high net wealth individuals, big companies were saying, we're done, we're out, we are tapping out of here. And they wanted to come over to the tax-free suburb of Boston, which is called New Hampshire, and really take advantage of everything that we had to offer, which is great. We're here, we're growing like crazy. I think we're the only state in the Northeast that's actually growing in population. The largest population is also young people, right? We're growing with young people faster than we ever have before. That's great. But we need to be successful as a whole. When we talk about energy, when we talk about opioids, when we talk about a lot of these systems, we all cross borders here in New England more than really anywhere else in the country. You can pick Oklahoma, Nevada, any of these other big states, Kansas. When they talk about their systems, they really are worried about their system. And there's very few people in a lot of those states that will cross over the border to work or live or have their family or community involvement. But in New England, we are so tied together. Our entire energy grid is literally tied together. So what one state does impacts the other. So we have to work as a team in so many facets. So that's why I say, again, as much as I tease Massachusetts, I'm begging Massachusetts to make better decisions. Now, I'll say this. I think I'm impressed so far with Governor Healy. I really am. I think she's come at it with the right approach so far. We've talked about energy. We've talked about a lot of these issues. She has, I think, a very nice demeanor where she has a lot of experience. And so I'm hopeful that things can kind of get back on the right track because where Massachusetts goes, Rhode Island and Connecticut tend to follow, which can be a good thing because they need help too. But again, let's back up to the politics side of things. I'm going to quote the great Joe Lieberman. He said something right, so let's quote it, right? He got one right. God bless Joe. He said, but this is about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, at Wall Street Journal or something. He said, Washington needs more New Hampshire-style politics. And I think everyone took a breath and said, what does that mean? And he's exactly right? New Hampshire-style politics isn't to the extreme left. It isn't to the extreme right. It isn't even to the middle. It's not. It's just the style of politics that gets stuff done, that understands not how to compromise your principles, but how to actually compromise on a bill or how to compromise on a ballot initiative in your town for town meeting or whatever it is. We always find a way to work together. That doesn't mean we come to the middle. It means we find a way to work together. And it's exactly what America is looking for right now. So what is at our foundation, right? And you've heard, a lot of you who have heard me, talk before, I say, live free or die. It is not just 4 words on a license plate, and it's not. It is the foundation of limited government and local control, low taxes, individual responsibility. I am the governor, and I'm telling you, you're the voter, you are smarter than I am, a heck of a lot smarter than I am. You know what your business needs more than I do. You know what your schools need a lot better than I might. You know what potholes need to be filled in your town better than I might. So what do we do in New Hampshire? We do what the Founding Fathers asked us to do, what they designed from the very beginning, and they got it right. We decentralize government. We send control of money and regulatory authority as much as we possibly can back to cities and towns. When we have these giant surpluses that we've been able to have here in New Hampshire, we send cash back to cities and towns to offset property taxes. Property taxes, and people say, oh, doesn't New Hampshire have high property tax? We do. Yeah, it's not fun. Don't get me wrong. But the silver lining is this. There's no tax you have more control over than a property tax. As an individual, I can't touch it. A governor has absolutely no say how you're going to spend your property taxes. It really doesn't. You go to your town meeting. You vote on your school board every year. If you like the results you're getting, you can keep them. And if not, you can fire those folks. And those are the folks that have the most impact on your dollars, how they're spent, where they go, and how your lives are managed. Your personal lives, your kids' lives, your schools, your businesses, your zoning, all of that. And at the end of the day, the local impacts affect your daily life so much more than Washington, who doesn't do anything, frankly, or even the state. And that's how it should be done. And so I'm traveling the country talking about this model, reminding folks that, frankly, unlike other states, I don't want to use the word corrupted, but other states, they got rid of their checks and balances over time. They took more consolidation of power up into their state capitals. And now we've seen that more up into Washington. And Republicans are as much to blame for that as Democrats. I am so tired of this new wave of Republican thinking that big government is somehow the answer. I see Republicans out there trying to outdo Democrats at their own game of big government solutions. And I get frustrated with it. We might be right, but that doesn't mean that I should put my thumb down as governor and say, well, I know I'm right, I have the answer, and you, that local school board, I don't like the way you did things, so I'll just fix it for you. But so many of us are reactionary now. When I grew up, a lot of us, I'm looking around the room, I'm about average age in the room. I'm giving you all credit, please. But they said, the MTV generation, you guys have, that was me, and they said, oh, you have no attention span. My God, isn't it true? We've really lost our patience. The most valuable asset government has, the most important thing is the discipline of knowing the limits of your power, and the discipline to say, it ain't about me. This job is not about me. It is about those we represent. And it is not just about Republicans or Democrats. My job, this is the best part of my job. My job is to be really selfish. My job is to put 1.4 million people ahead of the rest of the country every time. And I don't care. And you know what Massachusetts' job is? Maher Healey's job is to try to put her constituents ahead of the pack every single time. And that's competition. That's a free market. I am a principled free market conservative when it comes to businesses because you do you. Now, businesses that interact with government have to follow certain government rules, or schools that are government institutions have to follow government rules. But if you're a private business, I believe that if you're making political decisions, so be it. I think the free market will respond to that. Disney's a good example, right? Disney isn't turning itself around because Ron DeSantis said so, right? Disney's turning itself around because its profits started to plummet. It had to fire their CEO. They had to make radical changes. Because the citizens, the free market, said we don't want that product anymore. So they're making changes. That's what would happen in your schools. If the schools are doing something that you don't like, you're going to change out the school board. And guess what? There'll be changes. Or as a parent, you're going to have say what's going on in that classroom. And there's going to be changes. That's the free market of government. But too many folks in this country on both sides of the aisle think it's all about themselves. So again, it would be nice just to, pump yourself up and you raise hundreds of millions of dollars and run for president and all that stuff and you get all the headlines. At the end of the day, you going to get something done? Because my frustration, as a lot of folks know, with the former President Trump, was that he said we were going to get border security. We didn't get it. He said we're going to get immigration reform. We didn't get it. He said we're going to get health care reform. I didn't get it. He said we're going to be fiscally responsible. God knows we didn't get that, right? So, I mean, I don't want to take all, I mean, I think former President Trump did some good things. I think he actually handled the pandemic pretty well. I think I'm more of a free market guy than he is, but I think he actually showed real strength against China and put us on an international field of being the world leader, which we are, and we have to show strength backing Ukraine and all that sort of thing. That's what I believe. Has walked away from that a little bit. So I think he did some very good things. But I saw, as a Republican, I got very frustrated. I think a lot of us did. Now, are we going to replace that with another Republican on the presidential stage that, again, is just another big government Republican? I get very nervous about that, right? So I'm not here to say this, I'm running for president and all that kind of stuff, but I think the message we have is the right message. Now, does it galvanize votes? Does it excite people? I don't know. It's the right message, though. I really believe that. And again, I firmly believe by leading by example. Doesn't mean we do everything perfect here, right? We have the lowest power. Oh, let me back up. So did you ever watch Bill Maher? The other day. I was on Bill Maher. So Bill and I got into a little tiff. He came at me really strong, and I knew he was going to do that. But at some point, as the issue of California came up, and I was about to just tear apart Gavin Newsom. I think I hit him a little bit. He's an awful nice guy, awful governor. I mean, Gavin Newsom is really one of the worst governors in the country. And I said, look, remember when Republicans were the fiscally responsible party? But that doesn't seem to be working in Washington, right? We spend as much money as Democrats do. We barely even try to fight for a balanced budget. We're afraid to address, real issues. And I'm a fiscal hawk, so that kind of gets, and I work really hard to balance my budget. I took a lot of political hits to balance my budget because it's your money, it ain't my money. I mean, is there any greater responsibility than managing other people's money? Because it was their time they took away from their families. It was their hard work, blood, sweat, and tears. And now you're entrusting it with the government, or when I ran my business, shareholders entrusted me with their money to make money when I ran Waterville Valley, or I had 800 people I had to make paychecks to. And maybe God made it rain over Christmas break. And that stunk when you run a ski resort. That's really bad, by the way. But I had to make sure those families got their paychecks, right? That's why I have my ulcer to this day. People think I have my ulcer from being governor. No, it's really from running the stress of running the ski resort and the responsibility that other folks are counting on you to feed their family and help pay their mortgage, right? That's a big deal, and I take that same responsibility in government. But I don't see anybody in Washington that carries that with them at all. So I got into it with Bill Maher because what's wrong with California? So the taxes are a little high. That's just the start of it. It's bad enough you have to pay those high taxes in a place like California, or unfortunately, even like Massachusetts. What you should be more appalled about is how they spend your money. Remember when Democrats were the party that cared about people, that were the best on social issues? You walk down the streets of San Francisco or Los Angeles. They call it Skid Row in Los Angeles. I can't believe they actually call it that. It's very offensive, but they call it Skid Row in Los Angeles. The tent cities, the homelessness, the absolutely uncontrolled and undealt with mental health and drug issues there. Needles absolutely everywhere. It's disgusting. How have Democrat left-wing policies helped those individuals? You can't blame a single Republican in California for that. And that is a humanitarian mess out there. And it literally will bring you to tears. I mean, I'm talking literally will make you cry when you see it. We're not talking a couple hundred people. We're talking thousands and thousands of tents and homeless individuals and the quality of life that they don't have with absolutely no prospects of going anywhere because government out there has absolutely failed those individuals. So all of a sudden we have this world where the Republicans are no longer seem to be fiscally disciplined. The Democrats' policies on social issues have objectively failed. You have the humanitarian crisis on the southern border. They're solutions. I'm not saying New Hampshire is the only solution, but we are the model and hopefully the hope that people should say is, there's hope. We can get this back to normal. It just takes good leadership and building a good team. It isn't just the Sununu show. It's having a team that lives by that idea of being optimistic, of bringing folks together. If you're not optimistic, are you really excited to come to the table to put your ideas down? If you're always being yelled at by leadership, are you inspired to be part of that? No. So you've got to come with the right approach and the right attitude, the right leadership. I walk with a lot of confidence. We've gotten a lot done, right, in my 4 terms here. And I got to get elected every 2 years. Oh, there's another one for you. 4 years isn't enough time. Trust me, I have to get elected every 2. I get more done in 2 years than most of those knuckleheads do in 4 or 6. I mean, and I have to, because if I didn't, I'd get fired, right? I wouldn't be here. And that would be the right thing for the citizen to do. So I work really hard at getting stuff done. So don't tell me 4 years isn't enough time to finish the job or do what you have to do. That's a bunch of nonsense too. So in all those aspects, I think New Hampshire's a model. I really do. We're ranked the most fiscally responsible, #1 for personal freedoms, #1 for public safety, all that sort of thing. The ranking I love the most is most efficient government. We're ranked the most efficient government. So as an engineer, there's nothing better you can say. We get the best programs for the least amount of dollars that have to get put in, right? So we're the most efficient with the best bang for your buck. That's exactly what people want out of their government, because we get it done, not because we sit around. And the other thing, I got to take another shot at the Senate, because I haven't taken my shot at the Senate yet. But I say it all the time, and I think now more than ever. You have 100 senators, right? You can't tell me that if you fired all 100 U.S. senators today and replaced them with 100 random working adults in America, you can't tell me it would get worse. Are they going to do less, right? I mean, think about how low we have set that bar, right? And think about how much money that they spend to get elected and go to office and pontificate and do almost nothing. You should be ticked off about that. Both sides of the aisle should be upset about that. Leadership can change it. I really believe that. So there is hope here. Congress is a little tougher. Gerrymandering is really at the heart of a lot of our problems, right? That's a genie that is out of the bottle, and I don't know how you put it back in. You used to have 150 seats in Congress that were fought over, that were kind of independent, could be won by either side. That's down to about 50 or 60 seats at this point. So what does that mean? That means when someone wins one of those seats, a Republican wins one of those, a more conservative seat that's been gerrymandered conservative, well, even if they're more of a moderate Republican, now they're not worried about losing to the Democrat. They're losing about getting primaried. So they tend more to the right, more extreme. Same with Democrats. They win a Democrat gerrymandered seat, even if they're a more moderate, reasonable, solutions-based type individual. Now they're tending more to the left because they're more scared of a primary from their left. And so gerrymandering pushes everyone in their corner and creates the divisiveness. One of the answers is term limits. Now, more than ever before, these guys got to have political courage and tell the world that, yes, it's not a political career. Politics isn't a career, it's service. And give them two terms, 3 terms. I don't care how many terms you want to give them. But term limits are absolutely essential in terms of helping get some checks and balances back into that mix. I don't have term limits here. I get elected every 2 years. Only one of the governor has gone 4 terms. Because we actually do our job. It's 24/7. It's wicked hard. And after a while, it's like, okay, enough is enough. So I'm not saying I'm not running again, but, I got to get a real job. My wife is very excited that I just said that. I'll be sending you our resume shortly. No, but look, if this is my whole point, I make the joke, but it's true. It is not a career, right? It really has to be about service, getting something done and letting the process take place and letting new ideas and new opportunities come forth, especially in a place like New Hampshire. I got 201 Republicans in my house right now. I got 199 Democrats. We're still going to get stuff done. We're still going to balance our budget. I mean, we're the example. That doesn't gridlock you. That creates opportunity. All that does is say we're not going to let crazy get through anymore, which is great, right? So we want to, again, continue to be that example. Anyone who tells you, well, the Congress is too tight to get anything done, just the opposite. Huge opportunity to reach across the aisle. Huge opportunity to shun the extremes and show America that you can come together. I actually believe in Kevin McCarthy. I do. I think he's made the right moves with Hakeem and the minority leader there. He's made the right moves to try to get some Democrats on board with certain things and not just cater to one side or the other. Obviously, the drama of 15 ballots, that's kind of funny, if anything. But to become the speaker. But I am actually hopeful that somewhat that he's making the right moves. I'm not sure what's happening in the Senate. They're more of the locked-in institution, and they're the ones I pick on the most because, frankly, they're the ones that should be the better adults in the room, and they're just not. They're just not. Well, that was very pessimistic, wasn't it? Yeah. I was going to talk about the economy and SVB and big government's problems and how they affect markets, and we can do all that. But let's take questions. How about that? That'd be great. Thank you, guys.
We have time for, looking at the clock, for a couple of questions. Let's start with maybe,
What, are they going to go back to work? They're all getting paid. They're all on salary. It's fine.
You're not running, obviously. We have students from St. A's here. who will have the mic and be able to just raise your hand.
All right, give me your best shot. What do you got?
Just let me
sorry.
Start, if you don't mind.
It's like my dad.
Yeah. Felt like brother, maybe. Dad. Just before we get into the politics, the debt ceiling is a big issue in Washington, big, and it needs to be resolved. And there's major gridlock in both parties. If you were down there, how would you bring people together to address and to vote on the debt ceiling?
Yeah, so look, I would do it exactly as I do it here. So we need to raise the debt ceiling. That's what the left side will say. Okay, fine. I think we all understand we probably need to do that. But we're going to have, whether it's a full balanced budget or we're going to take, let's break the balanced budget into 10 pieces, and we're going to address these 5 or 6 right here. What everyone does down there is they say, if you want this, you got to give me all of this, without understanding that, just get the first few pieces done, right? Let's go after the low-hanging fruit. So the key isn't doing, a lot of times what I hear is, if you do this, then we'll come back in 6 months and we'll do that. No, that's not how deals are made. Deals are made by going in parallel. So you can put 3 or 4 things on the table. The debt ceiling has to be raised, but I think the Republicans should hold firm and say, look, maybe we're not going to get a fully balanced budget, because I don't think the Republicans even have an idea how to do that right now. I could do it, by the way, but I know they have a challenge doing it. But at least saying, look, enough with the pork spending, right? With all of the line item stuff that gets flushed in there. They kind of took a pause on that about 10 years ago, and then they all got lazy again and started throwing all their pork into the budget. Okay, let's get rid of that. Let's deal with making sure that there's efficiency in government. Let's deal with decentralizing a lot of the departments that we want to see decentralized. I don't think they have the courage to take on Social Security and Medicare, but they absolutely have to do that at some point. It's coming very, very soon. Look, I'll just throw it right out there. When Joe Biden says, don't worry, I won't touch Social Security, do you all know that in 9 years, there's a 23% cut in Social Security benefits? It's automatic. It's already in law. That is happening. So for all you who are expecting Social Security, 23% cut is coming in 9 years. So when Joe Biden says, I'm not going to do anything about it, he's saying, I agree that we should cut benefits by 23%. That's nuts. Something has to be done, and there are fixes to that without having the loss of benefits that Joe Biden is willing to let come to fruition. Nobody talks about that, but that's already in law. That's a fact. And with inflation, that train is coming, going to hit the wall a lot faster than people appreciate. So whether it's that, they have the courage to take that on or do certain pieces of it, but it has to be done in parallel, not trust me, do this for me, and I'll do that for you later. Too many people think like that, and it stalls the whole process.
Well, since we're in the room at the Institute of Politics, we spend a couple of minutes on politics. A former governor, a good friend of yours, Asa Hutchinson, announced his candidacy for president this past week, but he also made news by saying that former President Trump should not be a candidate. He should withdraw from the race now that he has his criminal issues to deal with. Your thoughts on Asa? Do you think he's right on it?
Well, Trump isn't going to drop out, so what's the point? I mean, it is. And look, he hasn't been found guilty yet. I think a lot of people are now realizing just in the past 24 hours, is he guilty of these things? I guess we'll find out. But look, is it a big nothing burger compared to all the other things people complain about? I mean, I was watching CNN last night, and they're like, this thing doesn't really hold a lot of water. If they found him guilty, he'd be the first person, he'd be setting precedent to be found guilty on the things he's been, being charged with. So it's not about whether he's guilty or innocent. We know he's not going to drop out. I think the Democrats have horribly misplayed this because they're just building a lot of sympathy for him, a lot of empathy, and at the end of the day, getting a guilty, I'm no lawyer, but it appears, at least the experts I'm hearing, getting a guilty conviction is going to be really, really hard to do. So now what if he walks, let's just play it out. They find him completely not guilty on all 34 counts. I mean, now it just puts into the American psyche that all the other things that we complain about are BS, right? And that's exactly, I don't know who came up with this idea of charging him with this kind of stuff, but they've just amplified him. They've just thrown gasoline on the fire of his prospects in terms of being president again. So horribly played, let's just say that. But I love Asa. Asa's a great guy, was a great governor for a long time. I think he was the youngest U.S. attorney for Reagan back in the day. Kind of an interesting note. But a lot of folks will get in the race. We'll see where it all goes. But Trump's going to do what Trump's going to do. It doesn't matter what we think.
Former Governor Christie was here just recently, and he was asked the question, when do you think you're going to make your decision, and how much time do you really have? He said, I have between now and probably early June to be, considering my future plans. Do you think that calendar makes sense?
Yeah, I think everyone has to decide, but I'd say by August 1. No, yeah, I give it, look, the first debate is in late August, right? So depending on what the debate rules are and how you get into the debates, I mean, that's probably going to be the calculus for whether, if people want to get in and whether they want to be there. I think Chris was right, what he said here. I mean, I think he's a good guy. I think myself and a few others would love to get on that debate stage with Trump and some others, and not just stick it to our own party, but just to call some things to bear with the right attitude and really, I think, have the right discussion. I mean, we'll see where it all bears out. And Chris is doing great on ABC, and he likes his gig, so we'll see if he actually gets in.
You made a little news on Bill Maher when you said that Donald Trump may be the nominee, but he's not going to win.
No, he's not going to win, no. Okay. No, in 24, for November of 24, no, I firmly believe, look, let's run the calculus. He didn't win in 20, right? He caused a lot of seats to be lost that we should have won in 22. And if you're out there saying, well, it was stolen from him in 20, okay, let's run that calculus. So the sitting president, if you believe that the election was stolen from the sitting president, well, then aren't they just going to do it again in 24? So why would you vote for the guy if you know he's just going to lose again? Or you understand that he did lose in 20, so therefore he's going to lose again, right? Like, there's just no logical, it's my engineer MIT thing going in my head. When you look at all the logical pathways, who is undecided on Donald Trump, right? There's so few Americans that are undecided. I mean, wait till they try to find a jury. 12 impartial individuals in New York City as a jury? Good luck with that. And I mean, here's another one. I'm not bashing on the judge. Do not misunderstand me. But understand the judges in New York are elected officials. They're elected, right? They're very liberal elected officials. So anytime you're elected, politics comes into play. Believe me, I know. I'm elected, right? Politics comes into play. So anyone who elects their judges, that's just a big mess in itself. We don't do that here. So just, that sense, a lot of things play against it. Run the logic out. There's no pathway where someone goes, you know what? I wasn't with him before, but I've changed my mind. I'm back with him again. No, what states is he going to flip back to him, right? When you run the process and what the numbers are. No, and then you have, look, the pro-life, pro-choice issue is still good. The Democrats are still going to throw gasoline on that one because you have Republicans saying we should ban abortion, national abortion bans and stuff like that. Is, regardless of what you think of that, it's horrible messaging and horrible politics, right? I get it, I'm pro-choice, but that's just so bad for the national messaging. We've got a great product on the Republican side. We are awful at advertising, branding, and messaging. We're the worst. And what I'm trying to do across the country is bring independents back on board, disenfranchised young voters back on board. Right? If you look at young Republicans that should be solid conservatives, they're barely independents if they're not already voting for the Democrats because they've just been disenfranchised. They don't like what they're seeing from top-level leadership and the messaging there. But we've got this great product that puts them first. We just don't emphasize that enough. We're worried about wokeism and cancel culture, which is awful, by the way, but that's not all we are about in terms of our party. I'm trying to bring that message with a little more optimism and show a little more kind of results-driven successes.
Again, we have time for a couple of questions. Again, we have the students with the microphone. If anyone wants to ask a question, just identify yourself. I see the ambassador has his hand up.
Thank you. I'm Bob Sherman. I was an ambassador.
Why don't you take the mic?
My name is Bob Sherman. I was a United States ambassador a few years ago under a Democratic president, now a lawyer at Greenberg Traurig in Boston. Governor, you mentioned briefly Silicon Valley Bank. Yes. And I'm interested in your thoughts on regulation in this context, that I know you're a free marketer and believe in the free market system. On the other hand, you talked about the stewardship of other people's money, particularly as governor, and the importance of that. How do you see regulation in that context?
Silicon Valley Bank failed for a variety of reasons, but one of them was because of big government regulation, right? So let's walk through it. Let's take a step back in time, and then I'll get to where we need to go. So what happens in 2008? Everything falls apart in 2008. You have Frank Dodd. So two things happen. Frank Dodd happens, and everybody says, don't worry, we're going to fix the system. We're going to have all this transparency. We're going to have all this regulation. We're going to make sure this doesn't happen again. Government will make sure this doesn't happen again. Oh, okay, so depositors go, okay, we're fixing, quote unquote, fixing the system. Our money is safer now. It's a false sense. The exact same time, you had the government saying, hey, to the banks, you know what you should do with your reserves? You should buy treasuries. You should buy a U.S. treasury. There's no risk in that, right? It's a treasury. You buy it today, you sell it tomorrow at your profit, like at your interest rate. You're going to get your money back plus some. It is the safest thing you can do. That's what you all should do with your money. It is risk-free, as somebody said very nationally, and very wrong, by the way. So what happened? Well, there is risk in buying treasuries. It's durational risk. It's interest rate risk. So when they bought all those treasuries, and then they get marked to market, they can't sell them, like they're taking, effectively losses on them based on the interest rates that everyone has to pay. Well, why are interest rates high? Because of this thing called inflation. So my problem is this: the government created this chain reaction of events that led to a bank like that who was horribly irresponsible, didn't manage. What the bank should have been doing is realizing that, oh, we bought all those treasuries. The government said, don't worry, they'll protect us, which they shouldn't have done. And then as they saw interest rates and as they saw the national markets moving and interest rates moving, they should have been hedging against that, right? Creating other investments to hedge against that. But why didn't they? Because Janet Yellen is the worst Secretary of Treasury in the country's history. Why? Because she had the gall to go out and say inflation was temporary. Don't worry about it. Remember that? So what was she saying? The only way to cure inflation is to raise rates. So she's telling everyone who bought those treasuries, don't worry, they're secure, because we're not going to have to raise rates, because inflation is temporary, even though it has never been temporary in the history of the United States. It was the dumbest move in the world. And don't worry, we have Dodd-Frank. We have transparency. It's all okay. So the depositors felt comfortable, right? The banks didn't feel like they had to manage. And by the time they realized, oh, crap, the rates are skyrocketing because the Treasury waited way too long to address that, right? Probably a year or 15 months to address that. It was now too late. Now they're scrambling to hedge their risk. The market had gone haywire. Only 36% of their depositors actually fell below FDIC limits. You had idiot companies like Roku putting $500 million in a single bank. Look, I ran a $20 million company, a mid to tiny sized company. Even I knew you didn't put all your money in one bank. But Roku's going to put $500 million, put the entire financial risk of their company behind one bank that was frankly managed by morons? So what happens? Look, I'm a free market guy. Should SVB have failed? Yes. Well, but Governor, it would have created a rash of failures. No, it wouldn't have. That's what the government keeps telling us because they're justifying backing that bank for certain reasons. The metrics that existed in other banks were not nearly as bad as SVB, right? Now, I get it. You had a bunch of CFOs and all that literally tweeting on a Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday night, and everyone realized there was going to be a run on SVB because the metrics of SVB got so bad. But most banks are not in that situation. Most banks actually are smarter than that. So the idea that all these banks were going to get run on is not necessarily real. You have to let the markets work. Sometimes that means you have to let some things fail. You had Janet Yellen, fool that she is, absolute fool, coming out the next week and saying, we're considering backing all of the deposits in the country, 18 trillion. Think about that for a second. She literally said they were considering backing all the deposits in the country. That's impossible. I mean, the financial irresponsibility of that. And so the government is constantly sending a message, don't worry, we'll take care of it. So what does that do? That incentivizes, not the banks in this room. You guys are great. And you are. The local banks are great. They are. Except I was going to make a joke, but I won't. Not a time to make jokes. You're lucky. What the government is saying is we're going to back your place. So bank managers go, look, let's take more risk, right? Let's take more. We can do risky investments because the U.S. government is going to be there to back us every time. So it incentivizes bad behavior. Big government regulation incentivizes bad behavior because it tells everyone to take more risk with other people's money when they shouldn't. And it's time that people realize that let the markets work, right? Government is not, I'm from the government. I'm not here to solve your problems. I'm not here to provide the solution. I'm here to create doors of opportunity, right? For you and your family and your business, whatever you want. But then you do you, live free or die. You choose the door that's best for you. That's how free markets work. And sometimes things have to fail. Sometimes idiots that don't know how to manage their money have to fail. And then the market as a whole gets better. They learn from those mistakes. But what has the market now learned? Well, I think we're going to be back. Someone said to me, they said, boy, SVB, they didn't really hedge their bets. I said, of course they did. They gave $300,000 to the Democrat Party. They knew how to hedge their bets. And they knew that they would be backed at the end of the day by their friends in Washington, D.C. But the example that sets is really bad. Now, is the answer government should do nothing and let everything fail? No, that's different. If you have bank examiners and regulations that actually watch the metrics, they should have been watching a lot of those metrics to make sure that the ratios are where they should be and all that. You want to move FDI insurance up from $250,000 up a little higher? That's fine too. I actually have no problem with that. You're going to have a lot of fintech. This is a little bit risky. I don't think it's a solution, but a reality. You're going to have financial companies that say, hey, you have $500 million. Well, let's say you have $10 million. We're going to spread your $10 million over 2,000 institutions. But because of technology, it's still liquid, right? There's technology that will allow you to basically withdraw all of those small bits of deposits from all these institutions across the world instantly, effectively hedging all of your money. Well, that sounds fine, but it's really a loophole around FDIC insurance, right? So we're going to have to kind of watch for that. I like the idea of hedging yourself out, but there's a limit to the point where no one exceeds FDIC insurance, and all $18 trillion is now once again backed by. So look, my point is this: you need leadership that understands how this stuff works. You need leadership that says, boy, we tried something and that didn't work. And the answer isn't always government's going to save you, because it really it's like a parent. Right? If I constantly bail my kids out of trouble every single time, I don't let them get hurt, I don't let them scrape their knee, I don't let them, get something wrong. You learn when you fail. The system gets better when you fail, and you've got to be willing, to a certain extent, of course. You don't want your kids jumping off the cliff, of course, but you want things to fail. As humans, as systems, that's how they get better. I learned that. That's one of the things I took out of MIT. You always design flexibility in the system so you can pivot, right? Don't make something so fixed in government that you can't get out of it for like 10 years. So you design flexibility, and always design a system knowing you didn't design it right? You design it knowing it will fail at some point. We never get anything perfect, and that's okay. But when you build that flexibility so you can adapt when you see the failure points and hopefully minimize those, that's good engineering. And that's why only engineers should be elected to office, and we need to get lawyers out of the system altogether. But that's just me. Or maybe I'm wrong, but I'm not.
Other questions? Pat? Dermot?
Here comes the banker. No, I know. Hey, I know.
Probably daycare.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Pat McDermott. I'm a volunteer with AARP.
Sure.
First of all, thank you for your comments on Social Security. We are very concerned about Social Security and really appreciate that. My question has to do with home health care. A recent research by AARP shows that there are about 168,000 people in New Hampshire who provide care for adults with health conditions. What can be done to ensure that family caregivers get the resources, information, and support that they need to provide care for their loved ones?
Great question. So, I don't care what business you're in, you're probably lacking employees somewhere, right? And in nowhere are we lacking resources in this country and New Hampshire than in terms of healthcare. And healthcare is the big one. We have an inverted triangle right now of demographics, whether we like it or not. There's a lot more old people than there are young people, right? Which means there's a lot of pressure on that system. There's a lot more need for healthcare coming out of the pandemic. A lot of people, God bless those nurses and doctors, they did amazing work, but a lot of them left, right? And so we need to encourage more young people to come back in. We want more people to come back into the workforce, and we can talk about who's coming back into the workforce. Older folks are, younger are not, and I can explain why if we want to go into that. So the key there is people. Resources, right? Not just money, but actual people. I can have all the money in the world, and I have a lot of money in New Hampshire. I got surpluses. Money's not the problem right now. Getting actual staff and people to, whether it's staffing a mental health bed or a hospital bed. I mean, hospitals are at about 25, 30% vacancy right now in terms of staffing for staff beds, or home health care. So, care in the home is the best care you can get. It is, especially for the elderly. At some point, obviously, things get more severe, and you need, more. I would call it more institutional care. Maybe someone has Alzheimer's, and it gets too much for a family member, or the severity of the illness for an elderly individual becomes so severe they need more true 24/7, or they need the technology or whatever it is. But home care is always going to be usually your best path to care. Couple things. We have family members that give up their jobs that are providing home care. Why aren't they getting paid? They're nurses, right? I'm not saying you license them as nurses, but let's provide flexibility in either the Medicaid system or put the pressure on the insurance companies like we should be doing. And some have flexed here, which is good, so that they're providing the dollars to reimburse that family member to take care of a loved one because they are actually saving the healthcare system and the insurance companies money anyway, right? It's a really good investment to do that. Now, that's a kind of a new model, if you will. Some are flexing open. I think we need to do more there. On the simple Medicaid side of things, we can raise rates, right? Medicaid pays a very low rate for a lot of the skilled nursing, especially, well, not so much in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and the rest of New England. We're constantly proposing to raise our rates in various areas, especially around home care of nursing. So it's transportation. That's another big one. So a lot of folks will say, well, you know, my mom we can provide home care, but she's got to go to the doctor a lot, and we don't have the ability for transportation to get her. If we actually had transportation, we could keep her in home care and keep her with the family more, but we just don't have the ability to do that, so she's got to be in someplace 24/7. So transportation services, especially in a state like New Hampshire that's very rural, right? You got to get folks from point A to point B. Rural access to care is the key, but that requires a robust transportation system. We have the money to do it. Don't even get me started with the federal government. It's so hard to get a CDL license. I know this sounds crazy, but it comes down to the fact the federal government has made it more difficult for folks to get a CDL license to drive a truck or a bus or something like or that. So our supply chain comes to a halt, but also our bus systems come to a halt. The average age of bus drivers is skyrocketing. That actually affects healthcare because more people can stay in their home. They have to actually make transportation decisions because we don't have a robust transportation network. So again, you got to be able to drill down in all these pieces of a system to see where it's failing and why. So that's just a few things there, but the key, and the last piece is actually increasing the number of nursing schools, right? So I've increased nursing schools here. We've put in more nursing programs in our community colleges, making it more accessible in our tech schools. If you're a freshman in high school, I want you to be able to take an early nursing class. It's amazing. I've seen kids, when I became governor, if you wanted to go to the tech school, you had to be like either junior or senior to take those classes. It was so screwed up. Why? There are kids that are so frustrated in school, right? Whatever it might be, it's just not their thing. Let's just say that. For 100 reasons, they can't stand school. Most of us, let's face it, school's hard. We have great schools here, but it's hard, and sometimes it's frustrating. But man, I've seen a kid, you give them one opportunity for a class they like. Shop class, automotive class, computer coding class, early nursing class, a child care class, something that's real and tangible and taps into what they want to potentially even do with their lives. All of a sudden, their entire day gets better. Their entire day is manageable. They actually look forward to coming to school because they know they're doing something they like and actually is building a life skill and probably a job. And this, as we all know, this idea of going to college, I'm not saying it's for the birds, but it's clearly not for everyone, and it shouldn't be. I just want to make sure at 18 years old, every kid can do what they want to do, not just follow what the system says to do. Go get a job, go to community college, go into military service, go to four-year college, whatever it is. And for those who are entering the workforce, that's great. That's exactly what we need. And hopefully they're leaving high school with real workforce skills, with certificates, with certifications, whatever it is, so they can, again, provide that home care or go into the path that they want to choose. You do you. That's really at the heart of all of it.
Yes, ma'am. You just wait for the mic.
Yeah, sure. Hey, how are you?
Good morning, Governor. Maureen Miletus with the Alzheimer's Association. Thank you for AARP for opening the door on healthcare. Quick question. You may be aware on the unprecedented decision of CMS to not cover the FDA-approved drugs for Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. This impacts 2,000 people on average daily who now outrank out of the early stage portion of Alzheimer's. How do you feel about that, and what can we do? I mean,
Yeah. So look, I'm not one of those capital L libertarians, get rid of the FDA and all that stuff. But our system here has a couple problems. A, it takes way too long to get these things to come to market. And B, we don't do enough of, and some people might disagree with this, with the concept of right to try, which basically says if there are experimental drugs on the market, we're going to make them available, the risk to them available, but folks that want to try them can try them, right? And again, you make the risk, you don't just kind of put something on the market today and you allow people to take it tomorrow. I get that. But the fact that these things take so long to come to bear, you can get a lot of these drugs that have been proven in places like Europe, right? And I'm a big believer in reciprocity. Do the Europeans do things as well as the United States? No, but they do them faster, and you can get the data and see what works and what doesn't. But our folks don't even look at that. Everything has to be done, we have to do everything our own way. We have to kind of recreate the wheel every time we want a new pharmaceutical or a new medical technology to come to bear, and we make it take way too long, right? We let all this regulation and nonsense kind of get in the way, as opposed to just letting opportunity come to the table. And let people, again, you don't let, oh, I created a new pharmaceutical, go ahead and take it. I get it. You need some basis there. But then comes a certain point where you let these drugs, these opportunities get into the market. You let right to try happen, especially folks that are dealing. It could be Alzheimer's, it could be diabetes, whatever it might be. I do a thing with genetic disorders, rare genetic disorders. We have days for it. There are so many families. It's weird. There'll be like 3 families that have a child with one specific genetic disorder in New Hampshire. And then there's 3 more families here, and 5 more families there, and 10 more families there. So individually, all these disorders have very few individuals. But as a community, there are so many families with kids and family members that are dealing with lifelong and very debilitating, what they call rare genetic disorders. That's a community that, again, should be kind of first at the table to say, look, if you want to try this, and if you don't. But allowing that whole process to move faster. I'm not anti-FDA. There's actually very few bureaucrats in the FDA. There's very few. They're mostly scientists. I think they just need to be moved along a little faster. The CDC is a different story. And I'm sorry, I know the CDC director came from Massachusetts, but she is a disaster. She's an absolute disaster. I actually think she did a good job in Massachusetts. I think Charlie would tell you she did a good job. I don't want to speak for Charlie Baker. But the CDC director, she is just an absolute disaster. She has been co-opted by politics. That whole organization has become political. Very few people actually believe and trust in it anymore. And it's a shame, because we need an organization like that we can believe in. But the lack of trust there is, it's almost as bad as the U.S. Senate. It really is.
Maybe one final question for the governor, if there's one here. If not, we'll just end with...
This is your chance. Yeah. It's going to be 1 a.m. You're going to be like, I should have said something to that guy. I should have stuck it to him when I had the chance.
The mic is...
Oh, there we go.
Maybe I'll just do a
Hey, good morning, Governor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
We'll do it. No, give me... Yeah, this will be a fast one.
All right, the fast one. Governors seem to be hot on the Republican ticket for president in 24. Yourself is being mentioned. Christie's being mentioned. Asa's being mentioned. Nikki Haley's former governor.
Don't forget Ronnie.
And Youngkin.
And Glenn. I love Glenn.
Okay.
Glenn's a great guy.
If you were not a candidate...
I'm not a candidate.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Can I,
or ever. Who knows?
I'm trying to finish my thought here.
I'm keeping you on your toes.
Yeah. Oh, you are. Is there a candidate out there in that field you say, you know what, he or she has done a heck of a job in their state? Somebody to...
Is there a candidate out there in that field? Oh, absolutely.
Second half of the question, outside of yourself.
Look, I will say this.
Other than
I'll say this.
He's right here in the room.
Look, people ask me to run, and I very well may run. We'll see where it all goes. But I'll tell you this. I'm not sitting this one out. I believe I will get behind somebody. I will absolutely endorse somebody. I'll put all my weight behind somebody. I believe in that. I think other governors. The reason there's a lot of governors is because governors prove them. I think people realize, wait a minute, governors the A-team. Governors across this country, Republican and Democrat, they get stuff done. They're held accountable. And there's that sense of accountability people want to see in Washington that they're a little frustrated with. So I think that's probably just why you see more governors. Like Tim Scott is the senator. He's the only senator on the race. Yeah, probably the only senator right now really considering it. Great guy, terrific guy. I love him, and he's going to come here. He's going to keep coming. But, you got to have executive level management, the buck stops here type decision-making skills. So I don't know how well he'll fare. But I loved him. He's a wonderful individual. But it's a different set of skills, if you will. So, yes.
Okay, yes, sir.
Hello, good morning. Akil Pandus, Eversource, and fellow engineer. So really excited to have engineers in positions of power at the executive and Senate level. So I fully agree with you on revamping the Senate.
I think you're on the ticket in 24. Is that what we're hearing? I love it.
Let's see, 2 years, right? Gavin, the question I had is how you touched on this, and healthcare and is a big component of this. But how do we make sure that in terms of workforce and getting people to move to the state, we're dealing with that in terms of recruiting, so that we're not just a haven for people fleeing the millionaire stacks, but also affordability, housing. I think we have a lot of opportunity, but when it comes to accepting an offer, housing, big one. primary care physicians. I'll tell you, I've been through 3 in the last 5. Things like that, right? More grassroots kind of pocketbook issues. What's your suggestion?
Sure. So I promise I'll be quick. So let's just talk about what the demographic situation is. Let's talk about who's coming into the workforce and who isn't, post-pandemic. If you are 33, 32 and up, 35 and up, let's say, you're pretty much your demographic is back in the workforce at the same level it was before the workforce, at least in New Hampshire. If you're about 35 and down and below to like 20 years old, they're still down 10 to 15% out of the workforce. Why? Why haven't young people got back into the workforce? Because we keep giving them all the free shit. We keep paying their rent. We keep deferring their school loans. They don't feel the pinches of debt. They don't feel the pinches and frankly understand the responsibility sometimes of long-term personal debt. Credit card debt nationally right now is skyrocketing. It's almost at an all-time level of personal debt that we're holding. It was very, very low 2 years ago. It's now skyrocketing, mostly with younger individuals, right? They're not feeling the pains of it. They're not feeling that, oh, I gotta pay the mortgage, I gotta pay. Now that's all coming to an end very, very quickly. And so I think you're gonna see that workforce demographic come back in. So what do we make sure we're being an attractive place in New Hampshire? Housing is first, right? We have a lot of families that want to come in. If you can't find housing, I put hundreds of millions of dollars up for new housing, and I think we're going to do it again, which is great on the affordable housing side. The second piece is regulatory reform. I've proposed what I think is, not what I think, what I know is far and away the most robust regulatory reform ever conceived in New Hampshire. I knew it won't all get done, but it's mostly around licensure. If you have a license to be a nurse in Massachusetts, and our licensing process is pretty much the same in both states, then you should be working on day 1 in New Hampshire, right? We can do a review and all that, but I want you working on day 1, not taking 6 to 9 months to review a license with a board that meets every other month. That's a messed up process, right? And we license a lot of people to work, barbers, cosmetologists. Technically, you need a license. Girl Scouts they're supposed to have a license to go door to door and sell their cookies. I'm trying to abolish that kind of nonsense. So we're doing a huge push on licensing reform and certification reform. If you have a national license, the foresters, right? A forester, they got all upset. Governor, you're trying to take away our license. No, I love foresters. They're wonderful. But most of them have a national license that is pretty much the same as the state license we ask you to get, to ensure that you're doing it safely and you know what you're doing and all that. Why are we duplicating that service? Why am I taking more money out of your pocket, right? If you have a national license and we think that process is good, then you should be working here on day 1. So breaking down those types of barriers that let people come in and not have to go through a whole relicensing process and all that, reciprocity, if you will, is a key part of that. The last thing is inflation. That's very real, right? Inflation is the worst tax on the poor you can possibly imagine. Because a lot of us can afford to put gas in our gas tanks at high prices or pay for food or go out to eat. But the low-income families just can't, right? So inflation is a tax on them. And the fact that the Democrats kind of ignore this and you have an administration that just kind of glosses over the pains of inflation for the lowest income families in America, those that they claim to care about the most, they are sticking it to the most. So what can I do about that? No taxes. I don't want your income tax. I don't want your sales tax. We don't want any of it. You keep it, your money. So we're creating basically an inflationary hedge. The lower cost of living to be here than in Boston, the lower cost of living than New York, as we build more housing, and as you get to keep your money. Everyone, what's the income tax in Massachusetts now? 6%, something? What is it? 5? Come on, you all pay it. What is it? 5? Okay, 5% income tax. So on day 1, everyone gets a 5% raise just by moving to New Hampshire. And your cost of living is lower. And every dollar you spend doesn't have another 7% added onto it. And when you want to use some of those interest and dividends, when you cash out that 401k or go into an investment that you made, guess what? You can keep that money too. We're not going to hit you there. And if you're really super successful, we're not going to hit you with a millionaire's tax. That is all a hedge off of the inflation that you have other states that ignore, and they just pile on the taxes like it's okay, and it hurts low-income families the most. And that's your skilled labor. That's your younger workforce. And that's why New Hampshire is the best place to live, work, and raise a family. Thank you guys so much. This was a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Governor.
You're breaking the rules now?
You're a man of the people. You're a man
I'll
of the
make a
people.
decision this summer. Probably this summer. I'll figure
This
out
summer.
a decision, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
so we're going to wait till
But
the summer.
look, I have an organization. We're raising money. My goal is to make the party bigger, more affable, get the independents and those younger voters back on the team. Awesome product, terrible messaging, and that's why I'm trying to stay out there and keep it positive.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, Gavin.
Be good.
Thank you.